Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Comment Clapback, a series I stopped a while ago, but I've decided to bring back for this special occasion because I've finally been pushed to it. I need to say my piece on two things that have been repeated several times on the channel and as the internet as a whole, and that's what's really pushed me to do this once again. I am seeing these two ideas regurgitated repeatedly, and it's in response to my recent Witcher review and my recent Star Wars review. We're going to hit on the Star Wars one first, because it's not coming from a place of malicious unintelligence is the way I'll put that. It's just coming from ignorance, and let's address it. I'm not going to show comments specifically because I've done that before in comment clapbacks and things went poorly, so I'm just going to address and summarize their ideas as a whole, referencing some specific language used because it's important to this point. Basically, they're upset because I said that the new Disney Star Wars is not pushing the bounds of blockbuster cinema like any of the original trilogy, or even in some ways the prequels did. They're just good blockbuster movies that aren't pushing anything. And the angry response to this I'm getting from the fans of this new trilogy, which, hey, if you like this new trilogy, that's fine and great. I have no issue with you liking it. That's absolutely allowed. But they are upset with this, and repeatedly I've had them say, Star Wars was never high art. It never pushed boundaries. And what? Are you kidding me? A New Hope especially absolutely set the bar and changed what blockbusters were at the time, and in some ways still has yet to be matched in terms of just leaping ahead of its competition. Sound design, visual effects, scores for movies like its kind were just not on the level that A New Hope set. And this idea that you then take me saying, yes, they're raising the bar in several ways, and twisting it, which is like the repeated thing here. They always twist it, claiming that I'm trying to say Star Wars is high art, which is a completely arbitrary term people throw around always when they're trying to be condescending. But no, I didn't say those words. What I said is Disney is by no means pushing the bounds the way Star Wars once did, and that is disappointing to me, because even the prequels pushed bounds in some ways in terms of the way that, yeah, they use completely green screen sets a lot of the times to not always the greatest effect, but they did do things with special effects for that time that were not done before. Star Wars now is doing a bunch of stuff we've seen before, really good, but it's not pushing beyond, especially when it comes to sound design and score. Don't get me wrong, it's still a John Williams score, but it's just, their visual effects is just what's, of course. It's really good version of what we expect, but it's not by any means something new and beyond anything we've seen before. I find this one more just annoying than anything else, and it's confusing to me how often I see it repeated to me and other people who are critical of this new trilogy. Like, you're overhyping what the original trilogy is because of your nostalgia. First of all, I was born during the prequels, so come meme me, bro. But I don't hold the original trilogy up to this godly standard. It has its flaws, and I think Return of the Jedi especially is not nearly as good as many Star Wars fans claim it to be. But in terms of actually being ambitious, the Disney trilogy is without question the most neutered Star Wars has ever been, and I doubt anyone can really combat me on that when Disney's Star Wars struggles to even have a cohesive theme throughout its trilogy. Next up, we're moving on to a Witcher comment I get all the time, and I'm gonna sound mean, but you guys have been asking me to be meaner in these debate videos, so hey, I'm gonna be meaner. In every aspect of when I brought up Game of Thrones talking about Witcher, I inevitably had someone angry at that point saying, why would you bring up Game of Thrones? It's not fair. Witcher should not be compared to Game of Thrones, especially with your point, because your point's stupid, because Witcher's in season 1 when Game of Thrones was as, let's say, good looking, you're talking about not until season 6. And do you see the logical flaw people are making? They're saying, don't compare Witcher to Game of Thrones ever at all. Now let's compare how they looked at season 1's. The idea that is being peddled online that you should not compare Witcher to Game of Thrones when doing a review of it is beyond stupid. It is a fantasy show being compared to the show that set the bar for fantasy shows. Of course you should compare it. And this isn't coming from someone who's a diehard Game of Thrones fan, but if I'm gonna review something, and especially with people asking me for me to do rated on 1 to 10, give me 1 to 10, I need to acknowledge what the 10 is. And for many aspects of doing a fantasy show, where everything is set, what we're looking to, the bar, is gonna be Game of Thrones at its best. And some of the worst will be Game of Thrones at its worst. But yes, we need to look there, and we need to compare to there. Not everything across the board, but when it comes to visual effects for creatures in a fantasy show, where else do you want me looking? The idea that, oh, it's not fair because it's Witcher's season 1 is also absolutely ludicrous. Yeah, it's the season 1 of the show, but it's also 10 years after the fact of Game of Thrones' season 1, so it should be a lot easier, a lot quicker to whip up some good VFX, and they did not. Just because something is earlier on its production overall does not mean you cannot compare it to a later on production. That is a completely absurd idea. It does not take into account that a lot of shows don't just crescendo up, they whiffle waffle. And on top of that, Witcher had a bigger budget for its season 1, many other things, but just this one is a logical disconnect I cannot understand. It just seems like people are tired of hearing Game of Thrones brought up when they are talking about other franchises, which that I completely sympathize with. But you have to understand, when I'm doing my job, I can't care about what you're tired of hearing about. All I need to care about is going, okay, here's the best we've seen in this medium with this genre. And this certain aspect of the show, how does the one I'm talking about now stack up to that? That's what I have to care about. I don't care if you're tired of hearing about Game of Thrones, because I need to do a good job of doing what I do for a living on this channel. Sorry. Anyway, it's really late and I just kept reading these comments again and again, so I just decided to record this video real quick and get it off my chest, because I was getting angry. I was getting really, really annoyed. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Why do you think I'm wrong to actually, yes, credibly compare a fantasy show to another well-known fantasy show that set the bar for many aspects of what a fantasy show could be? Huh. Or in the other way, how could I be wrong to acknowledge the fact that, yes, once Star Wars did push boundaries in ways it's not anymore? That one, I can't imagine how people are going to clap at. Anyway, guys, that's my ranty, ravey thoughts here. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.